FBI has jurisdiction for crimes aboard aircrafts. So I want to tell you a story that you're not going to necessarily believe at first. And when I told this story on television, I was criticized more than I've ever been in my career. Are you rolling? Hello, Matt Cox.
You got to start with the... Okay, yes. Hey, Tom.
Matt Cox. Did you know that it is illegal to jerk off on a commercial airline flight?
Damn. No, I did not know that.
Okay, so I'm here to ask...
I didn't know it was
this is
illegal
an
to jerk
intervention.
off anywhere.
I'm here to ask you to stop. The flight attendants have asked me to ask you to stop.
Me up.
No, the crime, it's actually a crime. It's a federal crime. It's an FBI crime. It's called lewd behavior on an aircraft.
So what if you're in the bathroom?
Well, then I think no one would know, right?
Okay.
And so kind of, I believe there's probably a don't ask, don't tell policy with regard to the bathrooms,
right?
When the urge strikes you. So I want to tell you a couple stories about guys who disobeyed that law.
Quite a career you picked.
It's a public service announcement for your viewers. Your viewers reach out for me every now and then. I think they need to know this. Okay. So recent American Airlines flight from Chicago O'Hare to Scranton, Pennsylvania. Had a fellow on it, a 24-year-old guy from Jackson, Mississippi.
How appropriate.
Named James Torres Smith. To this day, we do not know what set him off. We do not know what his inspiration was, but seemingly out of nowhere, he took it out and began pleasuring himself in front of all of the passengers around him.
Nobody ever asked?
What?
Was there an interrogation?
Well, he was arrested by the FBI when they landed in Scranton and charged with lewd behavior on an aircraft. What penalty do you think a guy like that should get for a crime like that?
I think 2 years probation, and he has to see a psychiatrist for 6 months.
Right.
Seems reasonable. That's weird. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty disturbing, but yeah, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for you and I, it'd be annoying, but imagine like the child.
Yeah,
or
I was going to say, it depends on who's around.
The nun.
Where the guy sitting next to him going.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just say the seat and the tray table weren't the only things in an upright position, Matt.
All right. That's so horrible. All right.
The maximum penalty for lewd behavior on an aircraft.
How much?
90 days in prison.
Really?
Yeah. Seems low, doesn't it?
Funny. I was going to say, I have a flight coming up.
Yeah, well, there you go. 3 hots and a cot for 90 days.
90 days.
Yeah. But we don't know what set him off. And the reason why the FBI cares about this is because the FBI is forced to care about this because the FBI has jurisdiction for crimes aboard aircrafts, period. There's no one else. Because it doesn't fall neatly into any one state.
Right.
And so it ends up being an FBI problem.
So if I was like the supervisor and this came across my desk, I would be like, who do I not like?
Well, yeah. Imagine having to fingerprint the guy. Right. There's a lot of hands-on behavior there. But we don't know what set him off. Mm-hmm. We have no idea. But we have a much better idea what set off 39-year-old Krishna Kunapali. Okay, he was an Indian national flying on a half-empty flight from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, kind of near Dubai, to Boston. And he sees this attractive woman from behind, seated up in the next section, and she had the most beautiful, luscious hair. And his mind starts rolling, right? There's a seat empty next to her. So he plops down next to her. We'll call her Layla.
Okay. He
plops down next to her because I think he regards himself as a bit of a pickup artist. And he tells her how beautiful she is. And he begins stroking her hair on the plane and telling her that he's very, very wealthy and that he would pay her $5,000 to sleep with him at his hotel room when they arrive in Boston.
Okay.
Layla turns him down.
No.
Not into it. Not into it, Matt Cox. She's having none of it. All right. So she's so not into it and so awkward that she goes to the galley in search of a crew member that she can tell to get this creep away from me. He's right on her heels to the galley. There's a service going on, so there's no one in the galley. And again, he corners her and begins stroking her hair, continuing to do this. And she's a little freaked out. And he takes out his cell phone and starts taking pictures of her because he wants to memorialize how beautiful this woman is.
Wow.
She's losing it. Flight attendant walks in. What does the flight attendant think?
That's a what, Instagram post?
No,
I don't
well,
know.
that she's interrupting a couple having an intimate moment in the galley. She says, "Hey, listen, you guys can't do that here. Go take a seat." Layla goes back to her seat. He actually goes back to his seat, like a section behind her. And then Layla goes and tells the flight attendant, "Hey, listen, this is what occurred. I don't know this guy. He did this, he did this, this." And the flight attendant, gives her an appropriate amount of comfort. Meanwhile, our boy, Krishna, is back in his seat. And there's people sitting around him. This is an international flight, so you got the section on the right, you got the section on the left, you got like 5 seats in the middle. There's a lot of, still a half-empty flight, but there's people there.
Right.
Another passenger, a dude, looks over, and Krishna is taking care of himself, is pleasuring himself there in his seat.
And he's got the photos.
The guy's looking right at Krishna. Krishna keeps at it. And Krishna looks over, makes eye contact with the dude, and then pulls the blanket up over him, but continues doing his thing to himself. Mm-hmm. Right? And so the guy notifies the flight attendant. And he's like, he has no context. All he does is see this guy pleasuring himself. Tells the flight attendant what's going on. The flight attendant, because it's a half-empty flight, clears everyone else out from that section and reassigns them to different seats. And so Krishna can have some alone time. Mm-hmm. And they land in Boston. They call ahead. Some very, very lucky FBI agents get to escort Krishna off the plane. And under interrogation, he confesses to pleasuring himself on the plane. And he's charged with that lewd behavior on an aircraft.
Was it the hair? It was just in general. She was beautiful.
She must have been radiant.
Yeah.
She must have been radiant. Like he couldn't resist himself. What would you sentence him to?
I mean, it's the same thing. You said it's the max is 90 days, but I think you have to take into consideration how good looking does this chick, right? Like that's got to be like a downward departure, right?
He got no time.
No time.
Pled guilty to lewd behavior on an aircraft. Got no time. 2 years probation, and I like this part, a $5,000 fine.
Nice.
The amount of money that he was offering Layla to spend the night in the hotel with him.
First of all, he can't have that much money. He's flying, commercial. So he can't be that rich.
Well, he's got $5,000 to spend.
He says he does.
Yeah, exactly. He was also ordered to have no contact with Layla and to delete the pictures of her that he put on his phone. The thing that people don't keep in mind, though, is that you're also banned from flying on that airline. That airline does not want you back. American Airlines, I don't know if it was them, tells you cannot come back and fly with us if you are engaged in behavior like that, which kind of boxes you out of some of your travel options.
Well, I feel like all those guys end up on Spirit anyway.
You get what you pay for. But things get more serious if you do different other things. Let's talk about 25-year-old Oregon resident Neil McCarthy. This was a party guy. He liked to party. This guy liked going to a rager. So he books a flight on American Airlines from Portland, Oregon to Manchester, New Hampshire for 4th of July weekend last year. So he could have a rager with his bros. Okay, he wants to party. And so, but you can't get a direct flight from Oregon to New Hampshire, so you got to stop in Chicago, right? So he goes to Chicago and he hits the bar at the airport, and he's just down in Jack and Coke and Jack and Coke and Jack and Coke after another. It was nothing short of a miracle that he got on the plane at all. So he's sitting there. The thing about Jack and Cokes is if you drink enough of them, what happens?
I don't drink.
I don't drink either.
Okay.
I don't drink either.
Colby, what happens?
What happens if you drink a lot
black
of Jack
out.
and
You
Cokes?
black out?
I don't know.
I'm
I
assuming.
don't drink either.
Are you serious? None of us?
I mean, I
This
have.
is sad.
I know.
Right?
It's three cool guys.
We'll cut this part. This is Patreon.
yeah. Man, they look like such fun guys. You got to pee, Matt. That's what he had to do. He had to pee really bad. But he's so inebriated. That long walk, either up to the front or back to the plane, just seemed like so much. So Neil gets up in front of everybody, pulls it out, and starts urinating on the carpet. One of those pees that is like just releasing like so much pressure. The PSI was insane in his PISS. And so he's pissing on the plane. He's using the bathroom right on the floor. People are pulling out their phones and taking pictures of him and filming him do this. It's available on the internet. You could watch it tonight if you wanted to. Speaking of,
we should play it.
Patreon content. And it gets really, it starts stinking, right? Because it's gross, right? And here's the difference. They need to divert the plane because it was so bad and just so disruptive to Buffalo, New York, where it landed. Mm-hmm. And if you divert an airplane then the penalties get higher than if the plane's allowed to land, and it's like you're inconveniencing everybody, you're costing the airlines money, etc. So Neil is taken off the plane by airport police and handed off to the FBI because, again, crimes on a commercial aircraft are FBI jurisdiction. And Neil confesses in a recorded interview. How much time do you give Neil? You be the judge, Matt Cox.
I mean, they rerouted an airplane. I still feel like that's super serious. Rerouting and having to reroute an airplane is super serious.
Right.
I mean, I feel like that's like, probably punishable by a year or 2 in prison, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get that. I don't know. What does he get? 3 months?
Yeah, you're good at this.
Yeah.
You're good at this. 6 months.
Okay.
For indecent exposure on an airplane, which somehow is a different crime than lewd behavior on an airplane.
Yeah.
And he's not allowed to fly American Airlines again, at least until he's housebroken.
So bad. Jesus. The dad jokes.
I reject your dad joke. I was an FBI agent for 26 years. 7 of those years I was in the FBI Honolulu office. And Hawaii had a unique place in the FBI because even though we were a small office for the FBI in a relatively crime-free state, we led the nation in crimes aboard aircrafts. Mm-hmm. And that's because Hawaii is really far from anywhere else. It's probably like the longest commercial flight you're going to take for most people. And
is it like 6 hours?
Depends where you're coming from, right?
From California?
So, California, like 4 or 5. But yeah, so it's a long flight. And so what happens is this. The common denominator is this. People who are going on long flights, oftentimes they're drinking alcohol beforehand. They're all going on vacation for the most part, right?
Right.
Or coming home. They drink alcohol either on the plane or before or during a layover. And then they take Ambien. You ever taken Ambien?
No.
You've never taken an Ambien to fall asleep?
No. I'm more of a square than you probably think.
Oh, no, I didn't. I knew you weren't Pablo Escobar, but Ambien is I've taken Ambien.
Bro, I'm 55 years old. I fall asleep right now. I go upstairs right now and fall asleep.
I understand. I'm your age as well. But sometimes I use Ambien when I travel internationally to kind of get regulated, so you're sleeping at night and awake during the day. But Ambien is a very useful drug. It gives you kind of 3 or 4 hours of just a Michael Jackson coma. You wake up and you don't even know the time passed. It's great. And you wake up, and when you wake up, you're not groggy. This is not sponsored content. But
I was going to say, this is sounding pretty good to me.
Yeah, no, and honestly, Ambien's a great drug. The problem is it can become not addictive, like you're like jonesing for it, but for a bunch of former secretaries of state of the U.S., Madeleine Albright, Hillary Clinton, all of whom became addicted to Ambien when they were secretaries of state because they're constantly flying around negotiating this or that or meeting with foreign leaders. So then they need to be at the top of their game. And then they can't sleep in their normal day-to-day life without Ambien, and they need to kind of wean themselves off of it.
Yeah, that sucks.
The problem is, and they tell you this in the package, but no one reads the warnings, the combination of Ambien and alcohol is really, really not dangerous. It's really, what happens is you black out, and for a certain percentage of the population will black out if they take Ambien and alcohol, and then they do crazy stuff, and wake up having no recollection that they did it. And on aircrafts, again, we saw this like 2-3 times a week at FBI Honolulu. People would like rush the cockpit, punch out flight attendants, put fellow passengers in headlocks, and just like run up and down the aisle screaming things. And then the plane would land in Honolulu. We got a call ahead. We would meet them. We'd take them off the plane in handcuffs, take them to a conference room at the airport, and then they would kind of like say, well, and they almost like wake up and say, "What's going on? I'm in handcuffs." And you'd say, well, you have no recollection of what happened on that flight? And they're like, no. And I go, well, you rushed the cockpit. You punched out a flight attendant. You put your seatmate in a headlock. You ran up and down the aisles like a lunatic. Again and again and again, this happens. And they're like, I'm sorry, sir. I'm assistant director of human resources for Microsoft Corporation. I don't know what you're talking about. And I go, did you take Ambien? He goes, yeah, I had a few Jack and Cokes and had an Ambien. And that's what happened, right? So what do you do with a guy like that, Matt? You're a justice guy.
Justice guy. And did we reroute the flight?
No. Flight landed in Honolulu as planned. You got a guy who scared the heck out of everyone in the plane, like trying to burst into the cockpit, acting like a lunatic, disobeying flight attendants' orders, made it like I've talked to, we always interview the other passengers also, and quite often they're thoroughly terrified at like a madman running around the plane like Conan the Barbarian. What do you do?
I think the problem with my feeling for that is that there was he had no idea this was going to happen.
the
Do you see what I'm
problem.
saying? Like I can't make somebody a felon, or like I could see you could put him on probation if we could not make him a felon. Could you give him a misdemeanor and give him 3 months probation? Something silly and pay a fine.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't send this guy to prison. He's just an idiot. Like he didn't know.
Right. Okay. No, I think and you're on the right track. So the dilemma we have is that, all those things, the interest of, we don't want to have to taxpayers pay to house the vice president of human resources who happened to take a pill
harmless.
and drink a vodka Coke,
Right.
put him to house him in prison. But we also need to send a statement that this is not acceptable behavior. So what we would allow them to do is plead guilty to a misdemeanor of interfering with the flight crew, and then in court in Honolulu, and they, again, they've spent the night at the Metropolitan Correctional Center there, the federal detention center, and then their sentence is agreed upon as time served.
Yeah, I was gonna say they've been thoroughly humiliated,
and they've had a
already.
terrible vacation, right? They've ruined the vacation for their family members. What's interesting about that, and always kind of bothered me ethically, but it's the only way to do it, is that in order to make a guilty plea, and as you know, you have to have some consciousness of guilt when you get up before the judge and you're admitting to a crime.
Right.
These guys all were being forced basically to lie to the judge about apologizing for this crime they committed because they had no idea they committed the crime.
Right.
But I think the judges understood that. The prosecutor sure did. The agent, gosh darn, did. And the defense attorneys did. But everyone is just kind of agreeing to like wink and nod and allow the guy to apologize for his awful behavior on the plane, blame it on the Ambien and alcohol, and allow him to eat the misdemeanor with time served. It was so commonplace that they didn't even assign like any one agent or any squad of agents to deal with it. It was kind of like you were the duty agent for the day or the week to deal with the airport guys, because inevitably there were 2 or 3 a week.
Wow.
And they all had the same insane story.
There's got to be a ton of people that fly. I wonder if Hawaii is the most flown to state, because let's face it, that you're not driving there.
No, Orlando, Vegas.
Really?
Yeah, without question.
But there's no other way to get to, like it's Orlando or something. You can drive there.
You can drive there, but the rest of America can't.
Right. Well, they can, if you're in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, people drive from New York.
Fair enough. I promise you that Orlando is getting more visitors per week than Honolulu.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
And Orlando Airport is also a hub. And my point, though, is that you're right. The issue is the length of the flight. Makes people do things to make the time pass that they wouldn't otherwise do. I mean, if you're flying from New York, that's like an 8-9 hour flight.
Yeah,
You drive yourself insane. I had a case when I was there, I was peripherally involved with this one. A 21-year-old guy from American Samoa named Luvalu Sevuai.
These names.
Let's call him Lou.
Yeah.
Okay. He was a Mormon, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints member. Coming back from his mission trip, the young guys do the 1-year mission trip in the Mormon church.
Yes.
His was in the Philippines. And he's going back to American Samoa, which is part of the U.S. It's a U.S. territory next to Western Samoa. But in order to get there, you fly through Honolulu. So Honolulu serves as a hub there. His seatmate, 42-year-old woman. I imagine she was attractive. I didn't actually get to meet her or interview her. She's sitting next to him and making small talk next to this 21-year-old boy. She's twice his age. And then she pulls out some NyQuil, pours herself a shot of NyQuil, swallows it down, and then drifts off to sleep.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above. That's where GhostBed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, GhostBed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping, and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost Bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners can get 50% off site-wide for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use the code COX at checkout. Again, that's ghostbed.com/Cox with the code Cox at the checkout to save a whopping 50% off site-wide.
She wakes up 90 minutes later with Lou's hand up her shirt and under her bra, feeling her breasts.
Whoa.
Yeah, not cool.
No. Not cool.
Not cool. And
Lou, what are you doing, bro?
so she loses it, contacts the flight attendant. They move her elsewhere. FBI comes in to take Lou off the plane in handcuffs. During the interrogation, Lou confesses, admits that he groped the woman aboard the flight. He spent 5 days in custody, kind of figuring out what the heck to do with him. And what do you do with him?
Not cool.
Not cool. Not cool, Matt Cox.
I don't know. I don't feel good about this guy. This guy's very close to registering, in my opinion.
I feel the same way. This one,
I'm thinking that he probably still gets 6 months. I'd say he gets 6 months to a year. 5 years paper, something like that.
Well,
what's the max? The max for groping might be 5 years. I would say he probably gets 6 months to a year. Probably gets a year. He probably gets a year, and he does. It gets 2-3 years paper.
Skin on skin, right? Wasn't even over the bra. I mean, it's not funny. It's an awful experience for this woman.
Horrible.
Awful experience for this woman.
It's wrong.
He got the 5 days that he spent in custody.
No.
The judge then sentences him to 2 years probation, and he must perform 200 hours of community service, and then cuts him loose to American Samoa.
How did I get 26 years?
He apologized at his sentencing. He apologized to the family and to the community, the community that he embarrassed, and yeah.
And not a good look for the church either.
No, I mean, again, say what you will about the LDS faith. They're nice guys. This isn't their thing. It's not their jam. There's not like an epidemic of this among them. And yeah, so terrible. All right, so I want to tell you a story that you're not going to necessarily believe at first. And when I told this story on television and in the newspaper, I was criticized more than I've ever been in my career. And so our story, it takes place in 2014. A 15-year-old boy living in San Jose, California, is fighting with his dad. They're just not getting along, but that happens when you have a teenage kid. Sometimes they clash with their parents. Kid runs away from home. He lived in Santa Clara, California, on a Sunday.
What year was this?
2014. Where were you?
I feel like I might have, because we talked about this already. I feel like I might have seen this on the news, but go ahead.
This was huge news, but
Yeah.
but you had a little bit of a sneak preview of what we're talking about, so act surprised. Act like you've been here before, Matt. So Santa Clara, California, gets in a fight with his dad. 15-year-old boy runs away on a Sunday afternoon. He gets to San Jose International Airport, and I probably shouldn't say this on YouTube, but it's out there in the universe. Not the best security at San Jose Airport. He walks up to a chain link fence and climbs over a chain link fence, and now he's down on the tarmac. 15-year-old kid. He looks at the closest plane, goes up to that plane, sitting there parked on the tarmac, climbs up into the wheel well, which has a little kind of compartment in the wheel well, curls himself up in a ball, and sits there.
Commercial airplane.
A commercial airplane.
Okay.
747 or whatever. The plane takes off. The kid had no idea where this plane would be going.
Did he realize that he was a stowaway on
he's
a plane?
He's trying to run away from home because he's decided he hates his father.
Okay, because you just said he kind of, fell asleep, right? Like laid there. Or
No, I mean, he gets up into the plane and kind of crouches down to not be noticed. Curls up.
No, he's aware of what he's doing. Okay.
Yeah, no, he's trying to go elsewhere, but he doesn't even care where, right? Home life is that bad for him in his perception.
Yeah.
Right? What he doesn't know is that this is a Hawaiian Airlines flight destined for Maui. He won the stowaway lottery. The plane takes off. Again, think about this. 50 degrees below zero at 30,000 feet for 5.5 hours. The kid passes out.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Plus, it's unpressurized, right? Like, is there air?
No,
out
no,
there?
no.
Like,
This isn't. There's nothing. The air. It's not pressurized at all. He is. He should have died, like medically, biologically.
right.
But he survives this thing.
So the cold doesn't kill him,
The cold doesn't kill
and
him,
neither does a lack of oxygen.
and nor does he fall out of the plane when the wheels
When the
come
wheel-
down. Right.
Right. I know that's happened before.
Yeah.
I've heard that happen.
Well, we'll get into some stats here. The plane lands in Maui, and sits there, on the ground. They're unloading one flight, loading up the next flight, and the ground crew sees him dangle like Curious George from the bottom of the plane, hop down onto the tarmac, and start walking around. And they're like, "Oh my God, what happened?" They go and get him. They call security. He's weak. Right, he's not doing well. He falls to the ground and then regains some strength, stands up, and starts walk to the front of the aircraft. I watched the video of this. The cops and the FBI are called. The kid is interviewed, and his story's solid. Like, he was exactly the runaway that they thought he was. 15-year-old boy. So much could have gone wrong for him, right? As we said, this has happened before, and most of the relatively small number of people who tried this have just died, right? They succumb to the lack of oxygen, to the temperatures that dip to the 50 to below zero, or they fall out, like we said, when the landing gear comes down.
Did you say 50 below?
50 below zero.
I thought it was 15 below.
No, 50 below. And,
Wow.
and 30,000 feet for 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
So this comes out in the news. It was a big news story at the time that this kid survived, and I was doing the media coordination for the FBI, so I was the guy talking about this in the newspapers and all that. And then NBC has an FAA kind of flight analyst guy who says that I'm full of beans because there's no way someone could survive for this. And thank heavens the FAA came to my rescue and said that they had done a study on this, because this happens every now and then where people try this.
Right.
And what happens is your breathing, your heart rate, it's called deep hypoxia is the term. It's kind of a state similar to hibernation, like what happens to a bear.
Right.
You kind of go into a coma. Your breathing, your heart rate, your brain activity continues, but at a much slower than normal rate. Again, this is for the lucky ones who survive this. Being younger helps one's chance of survival if you crawl up into the wheel well and you have this experience. Surgeons
thinking about doing this.
Surgeons have done studies to try to recreate this kind of mental state for surgery purposes. It's kind of almost an anesthesia. The FAA came to my rescue and put out a press release saying that there were 95 attempted stowaways on 84 flights around the world between 1996 and 2012 using this method. 75% of those resulted in deaths, and which means about 23 people have survived, including my kid.
That's not great odds.
Not great odds.
He didn't have brain damage in the end or nothing?
No, he was fine. It was weird. The
like
last
it.
known
Sounds like-
person before him to survive was a guy named Fidel Maruhi, who in 2000 hitched a ride in a wheel well from Tahiti to Los Angeles, which is a 7-hour flight. And that also dropped to the same temperature along that. Here's the problem I had. The media all wanted to interview the kid. And the media all wanted it. And there were also people saying, like, he should have been charged with a crime. Well, first problem, we'll start with the second thing. Charging him with a crime, the federal system of criminal justice does not have a juvenile
Right.
detention apparatus.
Yeah.
There's just no crime to charge a 15-year-old boy with. And also, should we be charging a 15-year-old runaway from, let's say, a hypothetically abusive household with a crime for running away and just being a really, really dumb kid doing something incredibly reckless and dangerous? I thought not. And
I could see the only thing I could even think to charge him with, because he didn't interfere with the flight or anything else. That's the only thing I can think of as trespassing, because you jumped the fence. You went over, like, that's it. Like, other than as far as the plane's concerned, he didn't affect anything.
Right.
Didn't harm anything.
Here's the other problem I had. And again, people were calling for his head, saying that this whole thing was planned,
assholes.
or that he'd somehow punched his way through to kind of like the baggage area, none of which was true. This was exactly what it appeared to be.
Yeah.
The problem that I had, and I'm happy to say this today, even though I did not disclose this 10 years ago, is that the kid's name was Muhammad.
Right.
So
So it would have been even worse for him.
imagine if that was out there in the media at the time when people are calling for his head or saying that he's a liar or saying it was an act of terrorism or something like that. We got a 15-year-old kid, immigrant from Somalia, named Muhammad, who jumps a fence in 2014, and stows away on a plane, And so, but again, the kid was legit. We
Yeah, you vetted the whole story.
Yeah, right, exactly. We spoke to his father and all that, and it was just an unfortunate situation, but it didn't seem like it was worth my time as a public information officer, one, to out a runaway kid, and two, to throw gasoline on the fire of the story by the fact that he was Islamic.
Right. Can we stop for a second?
Sure.
I am going to raise this.
Am I audio in that?
You're too tall.
I'm a human giant. No one has ever seen a man this large.
So, all right.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
All right. So let's shift gears and
You got to catch him doing this. The before and after. The action. So, go ahead.
3, 2, 1. All right. So here's the thing. So I've
And
flown.
you haven't got like a professional gig yet. That's what
This is the closest I have to a professional gig, is getting to drive 3 hours on my own dime to come to your apartment.
Oh, that's right.
And then turn around and drive back for 3 hours.
That's right. I remember the first time we talked, you were like, do you compensate for stuff? I was like, no.
Can you cover my hotel, bro? No. Just
wake
here,
up early.
Be here at 9 a.m. Yeah, exactly. So, as an FBI agent, part of my job is to fly armed. Right when I was an FBI agent, I'm no longer an FBI agent. So I've flown probably 1,000 times with a gun on my hip.
Right.
And there's a whole procedure in place that, due to air safety, I'm not going to disclose in great detail. But the bottom line is that you don't go through the TSA, the normal TSA checkpoint,
and then mention it.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. By the way, yeah, and,
Might be something in that bag. Beep, beep, beep.
well, it's on your hip. You can't even put it in your bag. They don't allow. You're not allowed. You must be carrying the gun on your person if you're flying. You can't put it in your carry on and stow it above your head and fall asleep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so.
Well, I know that people, if you want to, this is what I had heard, that if you actually want to travel with your gun, you can call beforehand or something and go and turn it in.
Yeah.
And then there's a procedure for them to take it and they do something with it and then you get it back.
Right. That's for normal people. If you're going on
people.
a hunting trip or you're a target shooter and you wanted your special gun for the competition in Minnesota or whatever. But for me, I think the airlines would look at us as kind of an additional level of security on the plane during that window of time. So you can't drink alcohol on the plane or take Ambien and
God.
But you can doze off.
Right.
There's no rule against that. Unless you're flying Alaska Airlines, which is why I hate Alaska Airlines. So what happens, you get on the flight, and especially in Hawaii, it's a long flight to anywhere, and you would sit down and maybe you'd fall asleep in your plane. You're sitting there like this with your eyes closed, and the flight attendant would come up to you and shake you because the flight attendants know who the armed people are on board, whether it's you or an air marshal or another police officer from another agency. Before the flight, you all get together and kind of make eye contact with each other and meet each other. So if something should go to hell on the plane, you know who's allowed to have a gun and who's not. Right. So it's important that you know and the flight crew knows also. And but Alaska Airlines had a rule that that if you're flying armed, you must be awake at all times. And they would grab you and shake you awake if you happen to fall asleep. And so as a result, I stopped flying on Alaska Airlines because I'm looking to get some Z's. I mean, if a terrorist takes over the plane, wake me up and I'll deal with the situation.
Shake me when I'm asleep, and I'm armed. You may have a problem.
Well, some of the agents, what they took to doing is wearing giant sunglasses on the plane, so to inside, which looks corny, but then it's up to the flight attendant to figure out if you're actually asleep or not. And after the 9/11 attacks, I was occasionally getting upgraded to first class, which the idea being to put the guy with the gun near the cockpit, so if anything should go sideways, I could be there to defend the plane. I'm here to confess today, Matt Cox, that they did not get their money's worth out of putting me in first class because I fell asleep. Bin Laden himself could have been spooning with me, grabbing my gun, and I would not have noticed. There's other funny little rules, like Southwest Airlines. You would think, that whole pretense that the exit row is, you want someone big and burly and strong who can open the exit row. They wouldn't allow the agents flying armed who have to pre-board on Southwest Airlines to sit in the exit rows because that's for their premier passengers who pay extra to kind of board in group one.
Right. Okay.
In my mind, well, this is crazy. I'm exactly who you want in the exit row. I mean, all I cared about was the leg room because I'm a tall drink of water, Matt. And but the airline wanted nothing of it, so they're hypocrites in my book. Now, I'm curious, having flown that many times with a gun, I never ever in my career transported a prisoner as part of my job. It just never came up for me. But I'm wondering, when you were a prisoner, were you ever transported on a commercial airline flight? And I know you also flew as a fugitive probably more than once. And I'm just so curious how that worked.
I was transported, but not on a commercial. It was,
What was like Con Air?
Con Air.
What was that like?
It was horrible. Like,
At least was it first class?
it wasn't as first class.
They give you like peanuts and stuff. Was it a hot flight attendants? What was it like?
It wasn't like the.
Was it like the movie?
It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as the movie because it's a normal commercial jet.
Did the U.S. Marshals run that jet?
Yeah, they run.
Okay.
They own it. I'm sure they have a few of them. And so it's a normal, and it's a big one. It's not like it's a little one with 2 rows. It's got the big one with the 3 rows, right in the middle row. And you pull up in your van, and you're locked up with 8 other guys, and there's hundreds of inmates already there on the tarmac, just standing there waiting. All of them in shackles, and you got U.S. Marshals standing around the perimeter of the plane.
Where were you going? From where to where?
I was going from Memphis, Tennessee to Oklahoma City, because that's where there's a transfer or I forget what they call it. Whatever, it's the something they call it something. It's a facility where you actually you land at the airport, and that arm that comes and connects to the plane, like the raised whatever walkway, right? I forget what they call it. You actually, when you get on that, you actually go directly into the prison. You never leave that.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty insane. But yeah, when we got on, you get on and you sit down. And
so was Oklahoma City serving as a hub for the U.S. Marshal Service to dispatch planes around the nation?
They call it a transfer station or whatever they call it. I used to know the name of it.
Like Atlanta is a hub for Delta, Oklahoma City is a hub for Con Air.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, interesting.
Exactly. So I got on in Memphis. We get on. They load the whole plane up, and then the last thing they do is like the first few rows are the women. They come on last because there's so few female prisoners. And then so you just get there, and are you
handcuffed while you're in the air?
Yeah, you're handcuffed. You're shackled, right? So you got the shackles on your legs, the handcuffs, and you typically have. I'm pretty almost positive we had do we have a chain? And I'm pretty sure, you had the rope chain. So you have the rope
for the duration of the flight. No, that's serious. I'm thinking like a water landing. If you guys need to deploy,
and guys will see what if we crash in the water? And it's like, I don't give a fuck if we crash in the water. Are you nuts?
I'm curious. They make such a big deal of that stuff when you're on a commercial airline. I'm just wondering if none of the same rules apply.
No, none of those rules apply. You're no longer you're exempt from all those.
Do they bother doing the pre-flight announcements about the cup falling with you put it on the child next to you first or anything like that?
Well, it's funny when you sit down, you got the thing. So what the worst thing is if it's long, and this is typically buses. I don't remember them doing this. Somebody told me they did this on Con Air. I don't remember this happening, but it's possible. They give you a bag lunch. They give you a bag with like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in it, or ham sandwich, or bologna sandwich or something. And you have to try and eat it. So you're doing this, trying to eat the food. I mean, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, we all load up. Then they come on, and the marshals are in there with shotguns, and they're yelling
on the flight itself.
Yeah, and they're yelling. Then they, if somebody's like, "Hey man, I go to the bathroom," sit down. You'll go to the bathroom once we're in the air. Like they lie to you the whole time. The guys on the tarmac waiting, they tell you they'll when you get on board, they'll give you a bathroom. Then they sit you down. Then they say, "We'll give it to you when you get in the air."
Yeah.
And once you're in the air, you get to a certain point. Then they start doing it row by row. Well, I mean, guys are known. Like the whole plane smells like piss because guys start pissing their pants because you've been standing there for an hour on the tarmac, and then you get up, and guys get up there, and now it's been trying to hold it for 3 hours.
Do they let you use the restroom on the plane?
They do let you use the restroom.
But they're dismissing you row by row to use it. And if you don't have to go at that point.
Right. Who knows how long you were in the van?
Right.
Because you get on the van. That could be a 45-minute drive to an hour drive, whatever, 2-hour drive. Then you get here, you're standing on the tarmac for an hour and a half.
Right.
Then you get in the plane, and it's 30 minutes to get in the air to the point where it's try and hold it for 3 hours.
Were there flight attendants or just marshals with guns?
Just marshals with guns yelling at you.
No movie?
No movie.
No snack?
And this is the funniest thing. I mentioned this the other day because I actually had this conversation the other day on a podcast where you don't realize those commercial jets that they can not straight up, but when you take off from the airport, right, and it's nice and it's okay, it's going and it's slowly going. They don't have to do that.
A lot of that's for the sake of the passengers to make them comfortable. They're not trying to make you comfortable.
And this thing there, I mean, it's going almost straight up until and then it levels. So when it levels off, you're like you guys are like, fuck, like, you know, what the, like they don't give a shit. And you're going like, this is terrifying that this thing, because you keep thinking like, I'm thinking like the wing's gonna break off or something. Yeah. That's how dramatic, but that's when you also really realize like these things are put together. Like you can't believe these planes. So anyway, yeah, they fly the whole time. Then when they come down, they hit hard. Yeah. You know, they land hard.
That's how it's just supposed to land, actually. It's when they're teaching, you know, people how to fly, the best landing is kind of a hard landing and let the wheels kind of take the brunt of it. But
they're doing it right.
Right. But no, the smooth landing that everyone enjoys is done for the sake of the passengers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Which I love. I love it when I barely.
Yeah, it's just a sweet, nice little landing.
Just a little kick forward. Yeah. That you know, these guys are bam.
Yeah, but the airplane is built to be landed with a thud.
Yeah. Oh, and listen, every time I'm taking off or landing, in my mind, I'm telling myself these things are built by amazing engineers. They're super smart. They know exactly they're built to last 50, 100 years. Like I'm telling myself this to make sure so that I don't freak out.
I heard a turbulence stat that an airplane like a 747 can be built so the wings will actually touch themselves if they were bent up above the plane and below the plane. Like those wings are that flexible that they will. I mean, it'll hopefully never happen, but that's why turbulence should not be a concern to you. But it's also why you should have your seatbelt fastened, because sometimes turbulence will pop up, and every now and then, every couple of years, there's a story about people getting brained on the ceiling and like getting brain damage or dying just because they're just sitting there like, you know, watching a Vin Diesel movie.
I keep my seatbelt on all the time.
Yeah,
listen,
I'm
not. You know, I look like the picture of mental health but I mean, you know, in calmness, but inside I'm like, oh my God, you know, Jess will look over at me. I'm like, it's fine. We're good. Oh, a little bump. It's not a big
my chick's here. You got to be cool.
Yeah, I'm sitting. But anyway, so yeah, we come down, bam, we land. The arm comes out. It takes you away. They take the handcuffs off real quick, and then they literally, I would say this, like the BOP could, or the marshals, or I don't know who's taking these things off, honestly, but when you walk in to that, through the hallway thing, I forget I should know what they call it, but you get up there, they have a, it's actually like a wooden box that's like 3 people high, and you walk up there, and the guys that work it are sitting on stools. They literally like hit your keychain. I mean, it's like boom, boom.
Oh, they're that good. They're that good of a shot.
And then it's like bam, 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 and it gets yanked off. You're like, Jesus.
Is it normal metal handcuffs, like the kind of police carry?
But they're that fast, and they do it so quickly. And then you march off, and they put you in a room that's got diamond plating around it, and then they throw you a sandwich. Actually, yeah, that's not true. That's not true. They actually had a bin where you could get. They had 2 different kinds of bags, which I thought was nice. It's like peanut butter and jelly or bologna sandwiches.
Yeah, something for the vegetarians.
Yeah, so it was nice. But yeah, that's it. So I've done that.
Now, when you were a fugitive and you were actually on the run, you had to fly at some point.
Yeah.
How'd you manage that? Was TSA in place at that time, or was this pre 9/11 or after 9/11?
No, this is after 9/11.
So how did you manage the flying? I mean, I feel like I get a proctology exam now as a private citizen every time I get on the plane with the number of IDs and the facial recognition and all that. Was that ever an issue for you?
I don't know about facial recognition. I had an ID that had my name on it. Okay. Like I always had. I've had like 26, 27 of them from like 7 different states where I went into the
issued by the DMVs.
By the DMV, most part, and I've also got a passport issued by the State Department.
Right.
So if let's say I was flying to, Italy. I mean, when I go through customs, when I'm walking through, or really coming back, but when you're going there or coming back, I've got a passport issued. So they scan it and they ask you, what are you doing?
Got it. So it's not something you made in your bathtub. This is like a government issued thing. The ID supporting it was the nonsense.
Correct. So if they were to run it, I would think that they would be okay because they're probably going to run it against that passport. And keep in mind, this is back in 2006.
I think it was probably tighter then than it is now, although the facial recognition stuff was less applicable.
I'll tell you, here's the story I think
Yeah.
that we're looking for is what did I tell you about coming back in the United States?
Yeah, share that with me.
Okay, so what happened was when I first got out of prison, and I got on an airplane, and I had to fly to first, you know where I flew? The first place I flew was Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Had to get permission, of course. I was going there to meet with some investors who wanted me to basically be entertainment for them while we ate, tell them a story my story, spend 2 or 3 hours, under the guise of education. But so they fly me in, and I remember thinking as I'm walking through the airport, one, super cool, right? Like I was just in the halfway house not long ago, prison, the whole thing. So that was like exciting, but the whole time I was thinking like, are they going to let me on the plane? Like
Why wouldn't they?
well, because when I was on the run, there was like a red notice, like arrest this guy immediately. I don't
you
know
were
what
worried
they
that
call it.
that's exactly so you were worried that the Interpol red notice had not been cleared.
Correct. So, and I'm flying.
Yeah, I mean, the FBI agent literally has to fill out a form to have that cleared. And
right.
I'm sure I've forgotten.
Well, so I had to fly to, and two, the other problem is I'm not flying to Alabama. I'm flying to Puerto Rico, which I understand is still in the United States, but I didn't know if there was an extra layer of coverage, whatever.
Yeah,
So I don't know. So when I go in through TSA and I, give them the thing and they scan your driver's license and give it back, and I'm waiting, and I left extra early. Like, what if there's an issue? Make sure. And boom, I go through and they're putting me on the plane. I was like, wow, super cool.
And you're not handcuffed. And there's
New experience. So I fly there. I come back. Same thing, coming back. Maybe wonder I'm okay. I come back and I'm like, oh, I'm good. This is done. It's a done deal. So that happens, and then I start flying all over the United States because I'm doing these banking conventions.
Yeah,
right?
speaking gigs.
Thank you. So I'm doing the whole keynote speakers. I'm going back and forth, different whatever cyber conventions, banking conventions, whatever. They're flying me, so I feel like I'm good. Well, then one time, after maybe a year, about 2 years, I get approached by a production company out of Amsterdam. They're doing a TV show called Inside the Mind of a Con Artist. And they've interviewed a bunch of different famous con artists. And so they say, hey, we want to fly you out. I argue with them on what they're going to pay. We negotiate, whatever. So I get a nice check, what I was thrilled with, by the way. So I go get on the plane. I fly in. I'm thrilled. I'm in Amsterdam. It's during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Wanted to go to Anne Frank's house. Apparently, it was like a 6. Like apparently, if you want to go, even when there's not COVID, it's like a 6 month to a year waiting list. So
really?
You can't. You're not showing up and getting a ticket.
Yeah.
And then in the end, I heard like it's just a house.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they were balling out of control back then.
So, and I kind of hung out, walked around a little bit, but it just wasn't thrilling. Everything's closed, but it is super cool.
Wasn't there some story about when you were a fugitive on the run and someone left a car at the airport or something like that? I'm trying to.
Yeah. I did that like one time when I was, I've done it twice. One when we were in Georgia, we left the car in the police substation, and then second one we did was when I was in Charlotte, North Carolina. We left it at long-term parking, and we went to the bank and got I forget what the currency is for like Spain or something, like lira or something. I forget what it was called. And we left a couple of lira coins, like we got like $1 worth and threw a couple in there, and we printed out like a brochure for like a hotel, and then like wedged it under the seat,
So to throw anyone off the scent,
right?
Was trying to find you.
Like 6 or 8 months later, there was an article where they said we believe he's in Italy, or we believe he's in Spain, or something like that. And I was like, oh, that was such and such.
So smart.
So I thought, oh, that's so cool. But so what happens is I end up flying to Amsterdam, hung out there for a few days, flew back, and when I flew back, I flew into Atlanta International Airport. So I fly in. I got another flight. I get there and I'm walking, come in, you come in and there's the line, there's 8 people in front of you, and that first person, you walk up and he checks it out, such and such. Oh, okay, thank you. Click, boom. Welcome back to the United States. Click, oh, what were you here for? Whatever it was, whatever they say. Boom, boom. He gets to me, scans it, oh, what were you here for? I was like, oh, I think I said like vacation or something, or or maybe I said, business. I forget what I said. The answer was, and he scanned it and he looked at, and he goes like this, looks at the screen, looks at me, takes the passport and puts it to the side.
Ooh.
And then he starts doing, the whole, he's scrolling on something, right? And these other people went right through. And I'm sitting there.
It must have been a white knuckle moment for you.
And I'm sitting there like, well, you know what I'm thinking? I'm like, I know I haven't done anything wrong. Like, I know, but I'm wondering, like, I got a flight. Like, in this, they didn't give me a ton of time.
Yeah.
And I hate Atlanta airport, and I'm not used to it.
Right.
Now I can go to Atlanta, and I know the whole thing. I'm fine. But then I'm like, I'm nervous because I'm being told you got to go to a completely different wing. You got to whatever.
It's very linear. Yeah.
So he's sitting there, and I sat there while he's doing it, and he looks up, he keeps glancing at me, and I go, how bad is it? And I go, how bad is it? Like that. And he goes, well, you're definitely going to have to talk to somebody. Like that. And I thought, holy shit, like I'm kind of joking, right?
Yeah.
And here's what's so funny is like, and I never saw him do anything. Like he had taken the passport, stuck it over here, and then just started doing this. Like
focusing on his screen.
Right. I never saw anything. But while I'm talking, he's facing this way to the screen. There's a hallway. Like you have to think, it's all of these different stations. And I'm way down. You had to walk by all these stations because his was the one that was open. Yeah. Like maybe 2 or 3 of them are open. But there's like a dozen or there's more like 2 dozen, and there's maybe 4 that are open. So we had to walk all past. So way down this hallway, way past the thing, I see a door open. And some guy's walking and walking, and you start to realize, and he's walking and walking and walking. He's all the way up, and he walks up, and he leans in and grabs my passport. And of course, you're aware of where your passport is.
Yeah.
So as soon as he grabs it, I'm like, whoa! I immediately look. He grabs it. And he sticks it into a thick, clear envelope.
Uh-oh.
Right? Boom.
That's evidence that needs to be preserved.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh, that's not good. So he drops it in there, and he goes, Mr. Cox? And I'm like, yeah. Huh. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, follow me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I follow him, and I'm looking at the other guy. He's sitting there like looking at me like I'm like he didn't catch Hannibal Lecter, bro. I promise you, this is a mistake.
He brings you like a secondary screening area.
Brings me to another area. Yeah. He's got a whole nother little cubicle thing set up a couple doors down.
Yeah.
Into another area where it's clearly like this is another whole section here. I didn't even know this was back here. So I go there. I sit down. He's got my thing, and he sits there and he starts looking. Now he's doing the scrolling, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Just give me a minute." Looking, and finally he goes, "Okay." He goes, "What did you do? Is it like a Ponzi scheme or something? What did you?" And I looked at him and I went, "I'm." It was bank fraud. It was just bank fraud, and I mean, wire fraud and some bank fraud related charges.
Yeah.
He goes, okay. And I said, what's the issue? I said, I'm
paid your debt to society.
Yeah. I said, what is the issue? I said, I should be fine. I said, I'm on probation, but I said, I got permission to, to fly. And he looked at me and he goes, he sat there and he goes, well, there's an expired. And I don't know what he said. I don't know if he said red notice or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He said, but let's say that's what I said. He said, there's an expired red notice on you. And I go, well, it's expired. Yeah. And he goes, still, and the look on his face.
Well, imagine what a boring job it is to finally come upon someone with your stature. Yeah.
Like, come on. I get it. And I was like, it's expired. And he's like, yeah, still. And he sat there. He goes, okay, what happened? I said, look, I'm allowed to fly. And he goes, okay. He goes, do you have anything that says that? No, and he goes, you're on federal. He knew I was on federal probation. Yeah. He goes, you're on federal probation. And I go, yeah, but I got permission to fly. He goes, do you have anything that says that? And I went, yeah, yes, I do. And luckily I had my carry-on and I had it with me. And I said, oh, and I got something from the judge. Because actually I had to get the judge to give me some. So I had both of them. And he goes, okay, well, you should have started with this. I said, well, nobody told me anything.
Yeah, no, they freeze you out. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't tell me what this was. I mean, I kind of knew. He's like, okay. And he looks at it and he flips around. And he's like, okay. He's like, what did you do? Like, what kind of? And I said, well, I gave him a quick boom, boom, boom. You know, this, made some fake people, was borrowing money and did that. As I went to prison, I just got out. I'm on probation. He's like, okay. What were you doing over there? And so we're talking, and he's just asking questions. And I was like, listen, is this going to, I said, you understand, I have another flight. I said, I don't know, am I going to miss my flight? And he goes, when is it? I told him, he's like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Hold on. Let's get you going. And then he already had, while he was there, another guy, so they had like a tram behind him.
Yeah.
And so another guy, well, whatever, the tram came and another guy picks up my bag from the tram and walks it over and says, so they've pulled my bag.
Oh, yeah.
They've got everything right there. And, he didn't have to go through the bag or do anything like that.
That's
So
good.
he grabbed the bag, grabbed me, walked me straight through security, straight through everything. There's a bunch of back doors, and then basically set me free. He said, okay, good luck. You got to go that way. And
The secondary screening is no joke. It's nerve-wracking.
But keep in mind, I don't even have anything. Like I've got something from, and that's the only time I've ever had that problem, by the way.
Interesting. In Chicago, we had back in the day, I don't even know if it's still the case, people would, are Cuban cigars still like something you can't own in the U.S.? It was a big deal back in the day.
It was a big deal at one point. I think they said that Cuba was making more boxes. So people were shipping like the boxes over here. Or there was something with the boxes.
See, back in the 90s, it was a really big deal to have Cuban cigars. I mean, or it was a fine, I guess, if you were caught with those in there. And so what would happen is at O'Hare Airport, when I was an agent in Chicago, people would go on vacation to, Colombia or Venezuela or some vacation and buy Cuban cigars because it's perfectly legal down there to buy it. And they would bring it back to Chicago with them. No big deal. If you were caught with it, it'd be like a $100 fine if you got caught in your bag search. But what often happened with these Chicago fat cats, exactly the type of people who would get Cuban cigars, is that they would tell the customs guy, you're not allowed to have these, and I got to write you a citation. Many people would offer the customs person a bribe. Anything I can give you to make it go away? And the customs guys were ordered to look over their shoulder to the left, look over their shoulder to the right, and say, "Come with me." And they take him to this. They take him to the room.
Right.
And he goes, "All right, what do you got? What do you want? What were you saying?" He goes, "Well, you let me keep the cigars. Like, I'll give you $50, $100, whatever." And he's like, "All right, so you're telling me that if I give you this cigar, if I let you keep these cigars, you're going to give me $50, $100 cash?" And the people are like, "Yeah." And the reason he brought them to the room is that was the room where they would be videoed and audioed. And then those people were arrested for offering a bribe to a federal agent at the airport.
That's so horrible. It's so horrible.
It was just like an SOP thing. You could count on like every week or two, somebody being being brought to the video room because they offered a bribe, after their golf trip. But you were talking earlier about transferring air.
Some poor guy.
Can you imagine?
You're like a dentist or something.
Yeah, there's always that guy, right? Some guy. He's a stock options trader on the board, Chicago Board Options Exchange, and and he wanted to have his cigars. But especially in Chicago, where everyone's bribing everyone there, it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And so, but I want to talk to you a little about transferring from prison to prison, because were you familiar with a program that the Bureau of Prisons had where for kind of low risk, minimum security prisoners, they would actually cut them loose on furlough to take a Greyhound bus from prison to prison so they're not taking up a space on Con Air. You ever heard of this?
My wife was released from... I should know. She's talked about it enough times. Virginia or something. I forget where she was in some prison, and they put her on. No, that's right. No, she was. So she was whatever, Virginia. Anyway, they put her on her and 3 or 4 other girls. They put them on a Greyhound, and they went through. I want to say they went through whatever. They came all the way down here to Coleman. To the low. So you have to be at a camp custody. You have to be out with it. It's called out custody.
Yeah.
So they put them on. They gave them vouchers and some money to eat.
Did they wear civilian clothing, or were they in their like prison jumpsuits?
No, they're like in prison jump. I think they were in prison jumpsuits. They're in like prison. Well, not jumpsuits. You're either in khakis,
top and bottom.
Yeah. And so they put them on the bus and they drove all the way down. They were allowed at one point. They get off the bus. They get some food. They get back on. It's like you've got to be here. And they
and they meet you at the bus when you arrive.
Pick them up and bring them to the prison.
Yeah, I had a guy named Perry Griggs. I told his story on my first appearance here, I think, or maybe it was my second one. And he was one of those guys, one of those camp guys, but he's also a very accomplished con artist, the type. And he was going from like El Paso to I can't remember where, somewhere really far, like a 4-day trip on Greyhound bus. And so they cut him loose, and he, had his prison outfit on, and they drop him off at the Greyhound bus station. They're like, "All right, Perry, we'll be there 4 days ahead. Well, we'll be meeting you at the bus. Don't do anything stupid." And Perry had done a very successful Ponzi scheme. I won't bore you with the details of that today, and had a lot of money while he was in prison, or his wife did. And so as soon as the BOP guys were out of sight, the wife came, picked him up, and they rented a private jet, like a Lear jet, for this 4-day period to go they went to Vegas, partied it up, had sex on the plane, had like the time of their lives, partying for the entire weekend. And then 45 minutes before they were supposed to be at the Greyhound bus station, they brought Perry there to the Greyhound bus station to wait for the BOP guys to arrive. And he got in there and went about his business. So he was.
How did he get caught? How do you know this?
I know this because he later became a fugitive. I arrested him for a Ponzi scheme he had committed while inside the prison. It's a whole other story.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he was ripping off people from Hawaii. He and his wife were ripping off people while he was in prison. He told people he was this billionaire bond trader or something like that. And so as we were piecing together kind of what happened and where he was spending the money, I was seeing he paid a Lear jet. He basically chartered a jet for the weekend while he's in prison, and we pieced it together that was the window of time that he was allegedly on a Greyhound bus, and then the pilot and everyone else told us exactly how it all went down. Yeah,
not bad. Not bad.
Exactly. So speaking of airplanes, I wanted to shift gears and talk about briefly the 9/11 attacks and the creation of TSA and some of the stories surrounding that. So 9/11 attacks happened 2001. I was in Chicago on a bank fraud squad. I get moved over, and everyone just kind of drops everything when the planes start flying into buildings. And one of the jobs we had in Chicago, which is where United Airlines, is to figure out on night one who were the terrorists, right? Because we didn't, we knew planes were flying into buildings, and we have these flight manifests, with whatever, a couple hundred names on it. And it wasn't just pick out the Muslims. You had to take a look at every single person who was on that flight.
It would be for me.
well, we approach these things with an open mind, but that's kind of how it ended up turning out. Is that Muhammad Atta, where was he most recently? He was at a flight school, and this is a guy. The CIA tells us that this guy was training at an Al Qaeda training camp, and so you're kind of put
him in this list.
Yes, right. You're creating two piles of people. The dentist from Des Moines goes in this pile as a deceased victim, and then everyone else goes there. So that was kind of an interesting experience for me to kind of see how that sausage is made from inside the FBI when there's an act of terrorism, and to figure out who decided to do this, and or in this case, many people. So the TSA gets in. People don't remember this, but the TSA was not up and running then. Before that, airport security was done where they were employees of the airport making minimum wage. And they weren't always the most vigilant people there. It wasn't a government job to screen back then. It was just something that it was a job you would get at the airport. I work at O'Hare Airport. I screen luggage and I screen people. And it was really lackadaisical. You didn't have to be James. Sometimes they would catch the switchblade in your bag. Sometimes you could fly on with 20 box cutters. And no one was really paying too close of attention. And then they decide to make this government agency TSA. But there was this window of time before TSA was stood up, because hiring government employees takes time. They're doing background checks on the people who are the TSA screeners and all that they had the military there. They had guys in camouflage with M4 machine guns standing there at security. And
I remember that. That was kind of shocking.
The whole thing was very shocking, right? And so there was a window of time before TSA was stood up where they had right at the end of the jet bridge, before you would board the plane, they had a a shower curtain there, and they would grab random people and pull them behind the shower curtain for a secondary screening before they got on the plane. It was supposed to be random. Okay. And so I'm flying armed quite a bit after this window of time, because I'm bouncing around in a counterterrorism squad, flying back and forth to headquarters and other places, and there was a window of time, I feel like it was a 1 month window of time, where they were absolutely obsessed with the idea of you bringing tweezers and nail clippers on planes. They would pull you behind the, they would ask you, do you have any tweezers or nail clippers or anything like that? I guess they were worried that someone was going to do something with a tweezer or a nail clipper. And so, there was no reconciling for them who the guy was with the gun and who they were pulling behind the curtain right before you step on the plane for a secondary screening. So I get pulled over for a secondary screening behind the curtain, and they go, "Do you have any tweezers or nail clippers?" And I go,
I don't need them.
I go, "Yeah, that's what I say." I go, "I'm an FBI agent. Here's my credentials. I'm carrying a weapon. I got a gun on my hip." And they take a look at my credentials and my paperwork, and they're like, "Okay, but do you have any tweezers or nail clippers?" They were so focused on that one mission of finding the person with the tweezers and nail clippers that it didn't even matter that I had a gun on my hip. I said, "Listen, if I'm going to do something horrible to the passengers of this plane, I'm not going to be using my nail clippers and tweezers." So I want to segue and kind of even go back further. You ever heard the term social contagion?
No.
Nowadays, we kind of call it going viral, but sociology doesn't use those terms. In sociology, they have this term social contagion. It'd be like panic buying. Like this is an idea or a behavior that exactly. Like there's a hurricane that has a 20% chance of striking like Miami, and then everyone in Jacksonville and Tampa are buying all the bread, milk, and toilet paper they can. And the reason they're doing it is not because they're watching the news, but because their neighbors are doing it, right? I would argue that the BLM protests were kind of a social contagion. It was something that happened. People got on the streets and started protesting. And the fact that people were doing it with social media now as an amplifier got more people out in the streets kind of protesting, either because they truly felt this or because they're looking for trouble in the streets. Conspiracy theories are a great idea of social contagions. The 9/11 being an inside job or the faking of the moon landing. These things spread among people and these ideas go viral. And so the reason I'm talking about a social contagion is because I want to talk about a very specific one called skyjacking. What year were you born?
1969.
Okay, I was born in 1970, so we're roughly the same age. High school class of 88?
Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
Because I failed.
Right.
I
didn't want to bring that up, Matt, but it's in your permanent record, so we can talk about it. So in the years, right around the time we were born, 1968 to 1972, the U.S. was suffering from an epidemic of skyjackings. There were over 130 hijackings of commercial airline flights in U.S. airspace during that window of time. Sometimes it was one every week. Sometimes multiple skyjackings happened on the same day. Mm-hmm. Do you have any recollection of this or even the aftermath of this kind of growing up?
The only thing I remember is D.B. Cooper.
Right. Well, D.B. Cooper is a perfect example of a skyjacking at the time where he takes over the airplane in the air, I think with a gun, and he actually no gun?
Bomb.
Well, threatened a bomb. Or did he have a bomb? Do we know?
No. He opened up his suitcase and he had it certainly looked like a bunch of dynamite with a bunch of, like it. The woman, the stewardess was like, it looked like a bomb.
Right. And it was Portland, Oregon, I believe. Yeah. And I think and so at some point, though, he gets a bunch of cash on the plane. Were they transporting bank cash on it or something like that? And then parachutes out with the cash, never to be seen or heard from again. Am I remembering this correctly?
I mean, you're doing about as good of a job as the FBI did to catching him.
Right. Because it remains an open case and a mystery to this very day who he was. And every now and then some news story percolates up. Was this guy D.B. Cooper? And it never really gets solved.
Well, I mean, what he actually did was he got on the plane. It was half-empty flight. They get up there. He asks the stewardess to come back. He hands her, he orders like a Jack and Coke or something. He hands her a note, and she said she was very pretty, and she was like, guys were always handing me notes. She didn't even look at it. She goes back, and I think after a little bit, he sees her still, getting people food and whatever, whatever drinks. So I think he comes back and he says, you need to look at the note. And she opens up the note, and it says, this is a hijacking.
Yeah.
And so, tell the pilot, blah, blah, blah. So she tells the pilot. She comes back. He actually has cards written up that a pilot would have that tell you like where to go, what to set the dials at. Yeah. He gives her cards. So that's what they think he had pilot experience even as a pilot. Yeah. She goes back. These are things that they didn't reveal right away.
Yeah.
So, but since it's so old, they've thrown everything out there. Mm-hmm. She goes back, shows the pilot, and basically says you have to land. So they call in, and he wants $200,000, I think. It's like $200,000. And they land. They unload everybody off the plane except for like the pilot, co-pilot, and I think one or two of the stewardesses. And he does at that before he even lands. Like she kind of is like, "Come on, is this serious?" And he's like, opens his briefcase and he's like, "It's serious." She said he reeked of smoke. I think he did smoke.
Everybody did.
Yeah, but on the plane, he was smoking on the plane, and he showed her the thing. She said he kind of reeked of it. Very, very overly polite. She said.
Yeah.
Anyway, they land. They let everybody else. Nobody even knows this has happened. They just know they landed. A lot of people, when they got off, they actually thought they had gotten.
Because he never stands up and makes some grand gesture.
And when they land, people are getting off, and some people who knew the airport they were supposed to land at are like, "Hey, we're not at such and such." Other people think they're at their destination. Like as they get off and they're coming in and they're talking to them, they're like, "What are you talking?" They're like, "No, you've been rerouted."
Yeah.
Anyway, they take back off, and he tells them to go to like Mexico City or something, right? Yeah. And they tell him, "Look, we can't go to Mexico City. We don't have enough fuel." And he's like, "Fuck." So he then says, "Come back." She comes back, and then he's got another city that's basically on the same track, right?
Okay.
So he's really just trying to get him to go that way,
right?
Because he knows that he's going to jump out at a certain point. Probably has a vehicle, something in that area. He knows he's got it all down. Same thing. Oh, they also he requested the $200,000. He requested 3 parachutes. They gave him 3 parachutes. One of the parachutes was a test parachute that didn't have a backup,
a ripcord. Oh,
a
backup. Okay, yeah.
So he ends up cutting away. He gets the money. He wraps it in the parachutes. He cuts a bunch of cords from the other parachutes, ties it up because he doesn't want them knowing he's jumping.
You really thought this through.
Yeah, he gave enough parachutes for everybody to jump, right? Like, so I think must be 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. He ties it all up into a drop thing, right?
Yeah.
So he's got the money tied up, and he's got it tied around his waist. So he's got all the thread or the cords and everything. And then that particular plane was the only plane flying at the time where they had a rear staircase. Okay. And so while they're flying, he tells them, of course, to lower it, fly at this altitude, this way. They're like, it's weird, but whatever. Yeah. He's got a bomb. So they're doing it. So then he pulls the pins as they're flying. The staircase goes down. He jumps out and he jumps. They know when he jumps because when he jumps, the staircase, they can hear it. So they know when it opens because they get an indicator light. Beep, 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 beep. When he jumps, they know it because bam! The stair thing, when he's the weight of it.
It's like a diving board.
Right. When he jumps, it slams back up. Mm-hmm. So then the woman goes back and she says, "Okay, he's gone." He lands. They believe, it was always said like, "Oh, he must have landed in the river." But what happened was he landed somewhere. I believe he made it. Like, I watched enough programs on this.
Yeah.
So he lands and he takes some of the money, not a lot. It's like $5,000, and he throws it on the shore. Now they say, "Oh, it must have washed up." Really, I think he threw it on the shore. And because a little kid 12 years later or something, or 8 years later, finds several little bundles, and it's not much. It's $3,500, $5,000, whatever. It's not a lot.
He did what you did at the airport, left a false clue behind.
Right. Yeah. And he leaves. So here's the thing. A few months later, maybe 6 months later, another airline is hijacked. Very similar. That guy, they tracked down. He looked very similar to Dan Cooper. They track him and another guy, I think it was another guy, down to a motel. They have a standoff, and I believe he either shot himself or he came out, and it was kind of like by a cop, and he gets killed. For some reason, the police or the FBI has discounted him for some reason, but some people say it's not the case. Yeah. And that guy also was a helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
So
seems like a good suspect.
Right. But for some reason, they couldn't connect him, or somebody, they didn't get, like the stewardess said, absolutely not him. That sort of thing where they said, no, can't be him. It was just because, like you said, it was a rash happening.
Well, it's a ton.
I think it probably was him.
Okay, interesting.
Because they never found him. There's all these people, oh, it's this guy died and said this.
It's such a romantic story, right? Because it's such a brazen thing, way to pull it off.
Right. Me being a criminal, I want to believe he got away, but I can't imagine. It's kind of like the guys that escaped from the Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Like those guys drowned. The idea that, I want to say it was 3 guys, the idea that 3 career criminals escaped went out and got jobs, lived the rest of their lives, and never got caught, never did anything else again to come in contact with the police. It's just not possible.
It's a hell of a swim. You ever been to Alcatraz?
Yeah, I have.
It's a hell of a swim.
First of all, you didn't make that swim. It's
freezing.
freezing cold. It's choppy water on the best day.
Exactly.
There are sharks. You didn't make it. Even if you did.
That's why they put it there.
Right. Even if you did, as any of those guys, you get caught within 6 months robbing a bank, doing something stupid. Like none of these guys, they didn't all go get jobs in factories. Mm-hmm. The only thing they were career criminals. They were always going to be career criminals. They'd all been in and out of prison. They didn't get out and go clean or go straight. They didn't do it.
Yeah, but these modern day folktales are so interesting.
It is. It's great. I want to believe that that's what they did. I want to believe that the guy got a factory job and now he ended up being a manager. He met some cute girl. He has some kids and he got away with it. I want to believe that.
Yeah, he got caught jerking off on an airplane years later.
How embarrassing.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got 130 of these guys, and as you pointed out from the D.B. Cooper story, they were not 9/11 style militants at all. Right? They fell into two categories. People who were, most of them wanted to be flown to Cuba.
Really?
Yeah. And so what was happening is a lot of them were again, this is 1968 to 1972 or 73.
Castro had taken over by then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Castro's Cuba. These were kind of like, a lot of them were like left-wing hippies, right? This is the Vietnam era, kind of the hippie era, Woodstock and all that. And they wanted to go live in the socialist paradise of Cuba, and this is the way they were going to do it.
I wish they would have all made it.
Castro, for this part, though, was like, bring it. And so what happened is...
he gets an airplane.
Right. And that is where I'm going with this.
Okay.
And so they would fly. It became so common. Again, 130 times over 4 years. Just think of the magnitude of that. Multiple times a week, sometimes
once a week.
Sometimes there were a couple a day where it happened. And so the FBI and the police were routine. So what happened is, fly us to Cuba. I have a bomb. They didn't have a bomb. They would pretend. Yeah. They'd fly to Cuba. And Castro would grant them asylum, set them up in a little one-bedroom apartment there, thank them very much for their service to Cuba. Castro would then have the plane. They would arrange for all these passengers who were brought along for the ride to get a free ride back to Miami or wherever. Then Castro would hold on to the plane, though, and he would sell it back to United Airlines, Pan Am, or American Airlines, or whatever, for about $30,000 or to $50,000. And it was this fantastic source of revenue for him. Other people...
These aren't making it. All of these are making it?
Yeah.
130 made it? Or some of them?
Not all of them went to Cuba. There were a lot of ransom ones as well, like D.B. Cooper, but not as well planned out. And those are the people who had a much tougher time, right? Because some of them would get the ransom and then go to Cuba. Some had other plans. Some were shot in the head. So there was any number of things happening here. But I guess for me, what was interesting is the idea of the social contagion of this. This happened a couple times. The media reports breathlessly about it. These kind of crazy dramatic stories, filming people like filing off the plane or on the tarmac and all that. And then other people get the idea and it spreads like a social contagion. It was cut off all at once and they stopped it in its tracks. And do you know how they did that?
I don't know. They started searching these guys getting on the plane.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Can you imagine you just walked on a plane?
That was it. It was like we're getting on a Greyhound bus. They weren't X-raying your luggage. They weren't X-raying you. You weren't going through a metal detector. It was like a Greyhound bus. And then they put in basic, nothing compared to what we have today, but basic security procedures, X-raying the bags, metal detector for the people, and the social contagion stopped because they hardened the targets. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I look at another social contagion that we're still dealing with today, school shootings. Right.
Okay.
Right. You had Columbine, and then the next 1,000 of them were like Columbine copycats, where everyone's trying to up one another, and the kids get their names in the paper, and there's all these movements. I just wonder, and you can talk about it or not, but what can we do to the schools to harden the targets using this airplane example as, a social contagion that was a huge problem that stopped in its tracks by hardening the target? What can be done to the schools, or should we? Do you have thoughts, or do you care?
I'm curious. How did the?
How did I become the bad guy?
No. I want to hear. No,
do you even care?
You're the guy. You're the guy I respect, whose opinion I want to hear. You're my buddy. Well, what do you think, Colby? You're the
how
smart guy in the
How
room.
they stop it on the airlines? They started searching the.
They started
people more.
X-raying your bags and X-raying and metal detecting the people,
Yeah.
making the target just harder.
there's already schools
before
that do
you could
that,
just
right?
waltz on board with anything you wanted to on the plane.
They're not even IDing. You basically write your name down. Like that's the thing with DB Cooper. Like they never saw an ID or anything. You bought your ticket, and that's it. They wrote your name in a manifest, and that was it. Yeah, I mean, there's who knows? Kids are so fucked up.
I would. Yeah.
What do you do?
Scanning them, but I feel like sometimes I don't know how often it is, but sometimes it's like not even like the one in Tennessee or Nashville. It wasn't even. It was like an ex-student, older student that just walked
what do you do?
straight into the facility.
Right. I mean, I guess
If you put officers in you don't really expect an answer. Put officers in there, right? That's all. What can you do? Like just make it,
metal. You can do metal detectors.
Yeah, they do that already, and there's still, a lot of places like in New York and these big cities, they have metal detectors. Like I don't know if it's stopping.
It's an interesting thought experiment, is what I'm saying, that we can draw from the experience of the airlines. A side effect to this whole thing is that's where they invented the sky marshals, which are now known as the air marshals. That came from that era, the idea of putting undercover officers whose job were to do nothing but fly on an airplane from place to place in hopes of stopping a skyjacking. And then I think the sky marshals kind of fell by the wayside over time and became the air marshals. And again, we kind of were resurrected as air marshals after the 9/11 attacks.
That job's got to suck.
I knew an FBI agent who was an air marshal, and I go, well, is it kind of awesome? Like everyone's like, you get to see the world. And he goes, no, you wake up in the morning, you fly from, you fly from Chicago to Washington D.C., and then you go have lunch, and then you fly from Washington D.C. to Chicago, and then you go back. And I go, I don't know, you're kind of like a celebrity with the flight attendants. They go, the flight attendants hate you because you're not a revenue passenger. They're seated in pretty good seats, and that's a seat that they want to be able to sell and to keep the airlines afloat and all that. But now they're required by the law to have a certain number of dudes on board. And those dudes, the air marshals, my understanding is that they're not there for the passenger jerking off or the guy who's mouthing off or throws a drink at the flight attendant because he had an Ambien. They're there solely to stop the terrorist attack.
Right.
And there's a theory among the air marshals that when everybody was thinking about what's Al-Qaeda going to do next for the next strike, is that there would be some kind of incident on an airplane that would kind of reveal who the air marshals were. And so the air marshals were really disciplined about kind of staying put and just protecting the cockpit. And so people are getting like fist fights on planes while the air marshals are like looking at Reader's Digest magazine. Yeah, I mean, again,
somebody should do something about that.
Yeah. But it's. I think the guy I knew who was a former air marshal who became an FBI agent was a big muscle man, and I go, it looks like you really kept in great shape, and he kind of had to, because if you're sitting on your duff for 8 hours a day, just flying back and forth between two cities, you got nothing to do but sit and eat. And,
I would think that would be something like a job that you would take. Like, hey, you have this duty, but it's like a year. Like, you can't do that for 5 years. People would quit.
It's a 20-year career for these guys.
Are you serious?
Well, they get the pension. It's the government pension.
20 years of just flying back and forth. Oh, fuck out. No.
I'm not doing it, but guys do it.
Yeah, that's insane.
And you don't get to keep your airline miles. That was another question I get. Do you get frequent flyer miles? He goes, no. But what's interesting about airline security and the procedures that they have, when I think about this, is that they always seem to be chasing the last attack. Mm-hmm. They don't do a whole lot, in my opinion, as a frequent flyer, of looking at like what the next attack's going to be.
They're not proactive.
Right. Take like that Richard Reed guy, the shoe bomber. Remember him? A cockamamie scam, right? He packs a bunch of explosives in his Air Jordans or whatever, his Reeboks, and he like takes them off and he's trying to like light them with fire. Mm-hmm. And like a harebrained plan. I don't know if it would have worked or not, or what the level of explosion. He was a French guy, I think, or from France. I think he was Algerian or something like that. They arrest him, and then now for 20 years, we're taking our shoes off to go have them screened before we get on an airplane.
Yeah,
because of one joker.
Yeah, they couldn't even pull it off. I think the explosives required like an energy charge or something. Mm-hmm. It was something like you can't even light the thing. You can't even ignite them with fire. Like it has to be like a battery,
Mm-hmm. I think back to December 21, 1988. I went to Clemson University. My best friend from high school went to Syracuse University. And so we got out of school a couple days earlier, and my buddy was like, hey, man, why don't you drive up from Clemson to Syracuse? I lived in Washington, D.C. pick me up, and then we'll go and we'll party. We'll get laid in Syracuse. It's gonna be fantastic. And I was like, well, I can't get laid in Clemson, so maybe I'll have better luck in Syracuse. And so I drive up to Syracuse with another friend, pick him up along the way. We get there. It's December 21, 1988. I think it was a Friday, and we're looking to go out and party. We're gonna meet some girls. It's gonna be fantastic. And that was the day that Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, filled with Syracuse students who were coming back from their semester abroad in Scotland. And do you remember that tragedy? Or I remember it very specifically because
I especially remember the photograph of the portion of the plane that was still slightly intact on its side.
It was crazy. Selfishly, instead of going out and meeting girls, I had to attend candlelight vigils and stuff like that. The whole campus was traumatized because everybody knew somebody who was on that plane. But it's an interesting story about how the bomb got on board. It was got on board. Someone checked a bag from Malta, the island of Malta. That's where the plane had been a couple stops earlier. When it was unaccompanied baggage, you were able to, back in those days with airline security, again, this is 1988. Check a bag onto a plane to go on to a flight if you didn't have a ticket.
That's nuts.
Absolutely nuts. And there was a cassette recorder, Colby, that's what they had before CDs, and that was packed with explosives on board. And in a Semtex was the explosive, and it had a what do you call it, like a barium switch. Basically, it had this really sophisticated switch that when it got up to a certain
pressure,
certain altitude, it then set off the timer, an 18-hour timer. The plane went up and down with that bag on it, and on its way back to the U.S. And then when the timer went off, it was over Lockerbie, Scotland. Exploded the plane with the radio cassette player in there. 38 minutes after takeoff, at 31,000 feet, it exploded. 259 people, all dead. It was absolutely terrible, and it killed 11 people who were just on the ground with the plane falling on their heads. Do you remember who did it?
No.
It was Libya. It was Muammar Gaddafi of Libya actually commissioned this, sent 2 intelligence agents to kind of build this device, and in retaliation for President Reagan, who had bombed the his compound and killed his 2 kids. Or President Reagan, I think, a few years earlier.
I remember, and he happened to be sleeping in a tent. Out in the backyard.
This is a crazy thing, and
he was nuts. Muammar Gaddafi was nuts.
Right. But again, back in those days, there was no screening whatsoever of suitcases. Suitcases were never searched or screened who were in the checked luggage. And I don't know if you remember, for years later, and even to this day, the flight attendants were really focused on asking you, did you pack your own luggage? And so it all came from that Lockerbie, Scotland. That was it. Because again, we're always chasing the last incident as opposed to looking forward to the next one. Little epilogue. In 2003, Libya accepted responsibility for that attack and paid $2.7 billion in compensation to the victims' surviving family members.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think happens to these people that go viral for just freaking out on the planes? Yelling, screaming?
A lot of those are, I was going to say, I actually saw something that showed that these were people that were renting, or they had half of a plane built in a studio. You remember we talked about the one where they have the high price, a jet that's built, but they actually have one that it looks like the inside
where you can kind of film a bit.
Right. And then so it's a whole thing that they do there, and that's why they're trying to. But obviously, there's some that are real.
To be clear, people are still behaving very poorly on airplanes.
I was going to say some are true, some are.
Yeah, the lighting's just not as good on the real ones. But anyway, I've been on your show so many times, and I've kind of told all the stories of any interest from my own career that I just want to thank you for letting me come on to kind of tell stories thematically. Because that's what I do every day on my social media, right? Is I tell stories. So I'm able to kind of go through and cull out a bunch of airplane stories and tell the long form version of that with you. So thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, TikTok, with a recent almost TikTok ban, what do you think is going to happen, and how was that 12 hours for you offline?
It was bad. Okay,
it was bad because that's when I got that's when he sent this panicked text. Listen, I was thinking maybe I should combine it. No.
I
need a couple hours, for God's sakes.
Yeah, no, it was bad. I mean, listen, my TikTok, I have 100 and something thousand on TikTok and a couple 100,000 on Instagram. So you would be cutting my audience into a third,
Right.
cutting a third off the top. And I use TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn and to a much lesser extent YouTube to market my private investigative practice. So while I have no real inside information or opinion about the threat that TikTok actually posed from China to the US, it just wasn't my area of expertise. As a interested party, I was panicking. Do you know what I did not expect, though, is that CapCut, which is how I edit my little videos that I post every morning, is owned by ByteDance, who owns TikTok. So when they took down TikTok for that 12-hour period, all of my videos, which are now stored in the cloud for CapCut, for reposting purposes and whatnot, was also done. I could not edit or access videos on CapCut. So I panicked, and then I realized there's such a thing as VPNs, and so I got a VPN on my phone, which created the illusion I was in Amsterdam, so I could continue accessing my content and editing videos. Colby, as far as what's going to happen, I really have no idea. I mean, Trump, I think, did a real favor for himself with young people by kind of postponing the TikTok ban for 90 days. I can't imagine that this is a priority in his presidency with everything else he's got going on. So I suspect that maybe the whole thing will just blow over. I'm certainly hoping so, based on my own selfish reasons.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it's 90 days. It's going to eventually lapse, right? Like, I mean, the whole goal is to get them to sell it to some other corporation, right? Like,
Right.
they sell this, like...
My understanding, because I was following the story pretty closely, is that ByteDance says that, listen, just selling the company doesn't mean much because it's so our algorithms and all that are so intertwined with what we do here, and so we can, and so we can't just like sell you the URL TikTok.com and have you kind of take off with it, because the algorithm's the thing with TikTok. It's that if you're interested in tap dancing, you're going to see a lot of tap dancing videos. If you're interested in books, you're going to see a lot of book videos. And so they say that that's not something that can easily be recreated by just selling the company, and they're not willing to give their algorithms away, probably perhaps for nefarious reasons. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think it's a fool's errand to predict what President Trump's going to do, because he's an impulsive guy,
Right.
and he thinks differently than other politicians. What do you think? Do you have a theory?
Let it stay. We need it.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I need it too. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
how many? You got
No,
a ton
I-
of followers on
Yeah,
TikTok, right?
I don't really have much of a theory other than that's what I'm pulling for to keep it. Yeah, we're trying to.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's other algorithms. I think somebody could come and buy it, use their own They could say, hey, we'll sell you everything but the algorithm. And I think that let's face it, Facebook, Instagram, what is it? X, like they all have an algorithm. Like you can figure out
I mean,
an
it
algorithm.
feels like a natural for Elon Musk.
I was gonna say, but how much does this guy get?
Yeah, we need him to
Who
put us
knows?
in Mars. He shouldn't
he's
be.
got his other problems, right?
He shouldn't be looking for ISIS beheading videos on TikTok. He should be putting us on Mars.
He's out there kicking in towards the government buildings right now. Like, I want to see all the checks you're cutting. He's doing shit right now.
Do you think FBI agents now? Well, I mean, I'm assuming they are all over social media looking like. Say if you were in your same position you were 20 years ago, you're searching these people's social media, searching their names, related people.
Was it 20
Searching-
years ago?
I was an agent 20 years ago, but I was searching who?
So let's say you're investigating a financial crime,
Yeah.
and they're probably on their TikToks, Instagram.
Oh yeah, no. I'm happy to address that. Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, I was an agent 5 years ago, so we don't have to go back 20 years, Colby. But during the advent of social media, I mean, even going back to MySpace, I would go to each of my subjects' MySpace and begin like taking screenshots, because they're practically confessing. A lot of these people, especially the fraud people, are living like kings. I know you find this hard to believe that some people commit fraud and then you spend that money on living a really extravagant lifestyle and cars and jewelry, and some people like to brag about that on social media.
I met a guy like that.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's great evidence that they're providing to the FBI. So I absolutely was. It wasn't like I'm monitoring like random people, but if I have the subject of an investigation, I'm absolutely doing a social media sweep of everything they've ever touched.
I remember a kid that I was locked up with. I've actually talked about him before. Bunny Hop. He had Bunny Hop. Have you heard this?
No.
He had the black guy. And I shouldn't say kid. He was probably 25, 26, whatever. But he had a tattoo of his name.
Not
Bunny
the
Hop.
most fierce street name.
No, and he actually got the name, and I was like, "How did you get the nickname Bunny Hop?" He goes, "When I was a little kid, he's like, I used to do the Bunny Hop, and I was really good at it." I was like, "Yeah, not the tough."
Yeah, it doesn't really
cool
strike
guy.
fear
Yeah.
into the heart
My
of
mom-
the
yeah,
Bloods. Yeah,
His mom used to call him Bunny Hop.
yeah.
And he had robbed the bank, and he went home, and he took all the money and laid on his bed and did a bunch of selfies of him with all this money around him.
Yeah.
But he did not take them out of the bank wrappers. And the wrappers had something on it that basically let them know that this was the bank. There was like the bank, whatever. They had a number that or stamp or something that kind of let them know it was from the bank. Not that the people watching it saw it, but people that knew him in his group also knew that a bank had been robbed.
Yeah.
And now, within hours, you've got these pictures on Facebook, and somebody called the FBI and said, listen, I think you guys might want to check this out. They checked it out, and then when they went to his house or down the street or his buddy that helped rob the bank, they went and they found the car that had been used. It was stolen, and one of them had left a prescription bottle in the vehicle that also had their name. Like, it was just like the breadcrumbs were right there.
It's like the equivalent of writing your bank robbery note on the back of your electric bill.
Exactly. It was just and so he was in prison with me. Social media.
Yeah, did him in. Yeah. I mean, if thinking of street names, I arrested a gangster disciple once named Stinky.
I've been using Mando's whole body deodorant, and let me tell you, you can use it anywhere. Pits, balls, thighs, and even your feet. Mando's powered by mandelic acid, so it stops odor before it even starts. It blocks odor all day. I'm talking 72 hours. I love the scents too. My favorite is bourbon leather. It smells amazing. You can choose from other fresh options like Cloverwood and Mount Fuji. And the best part, no baking soda, no parabens, just clean, safe deodorant for your whole body. I've added Mando to my daily routine, and honestly, I feel fresher and more confident. It works way better than just showering alone. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid deodorant stick, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. You'll get 40% off your starter pack if you use code COX at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Once again, that's shopmando.com and use the promo code COX.
It was his like street name, and
no,
his mom it was not his Christian name, and I said, well, why on earth do you have the name Stinky? He goes, when I was a baby, I had the stinkiest diapers, and my parents used to call me that, and it just kind of stuck. I'm like a 24-year-old man.
Like, I'm going to go out of my way here and say there are other.
Yeah, he just couldn't shake that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't help when these guys introduce themselves as that.
Well, yeah, it kind of begs the question.
Hey, what's your name? Well, they call me Stinky.
Yeah.
Okay, well. Hold on. Excuse me. It bothers me when I do something, I immediately look at Colby to see if he's going to mark it down, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
That lets me know. Like,
that's going in the highlight reel. Yeah,
really?
I get it.
Stinky. I told you there was a guy in prison. There was a guy named Wee Wee and a guy named Doo-Doo. Doo-Doo was the shit.
Were they roommates? Oh, Doo-Doo was the shit? You're good.
That's my dad joke. But that's true. And that was funny because a guy had told me, because I had met this guy when I first got locked up. I went a few months and I go, bro, did you know there was a guy here named Wee Wee? He goes, bro, there's a dude that works in the law library named Doo-Doo. And I was like, yeah, I know Wee Wee. He said, but I'll be honest with you, Doo-Doo's the shit. And I was just like, I'm in prison, and you just told like the worst prison dad joke.
Was Bunny Hop in that prison fight that you broke up?
Yes, Bunny Hop was the guy.
I'm sure Tom's never heard that story because he doesn't listen.
So that's right. So Bunny Hop is playing. Have you ever? First of all, chess is a game of dignity, of kings, of the aristocracy.
Without question.
Have you ever seen inmates play it?
No.
It's boiled all the way down to just street, as scummy as you can think. I mean, they're
talking shit as they're playing chess.
God, and they of course fast too. They're like, yeah, I got you, bitch. Now what you gonna do? Oh, and they slide the chess piece like forward. And they're like, I'm in your fucking house. I'm in your house now. What you gonna do now? And, I mean, it's just like, God, oh my God, it's horrible.
Full contact chess.
God, horrible. So these two guys, one of them was Bunny Hop, and one of them's a guy named Flacco. Now Flacco's in there, by the way, for murder. Like he's like murdered people. He's a cartel member. He's a young kid.
Yeah.
But he's well, maybe he's just pushing that agenda, but he was there for like murder, right?
Yeah.
Was that why what the federal charge was? I don't know, but supposedly he's connected to several murders on his case, whatever. And he's there. He might have been there for drugs, but there was and this is all inmate gossip. Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
But these guys are, gotcha.
Are they talented chess players? Have they kind of learned?
Some of these guys are amazing. Yeah. They played forever. I mean, there were guys I knew who had been locked up 30 years, and all they had in their locker was chess books.
Yeah,
like
makes sense.
They could play 4 guys, 10 guys without even looking at the
It
board.
rewires the mind. Yeah.
They were amazing. They'll never get out of prison, but yeah, they could play some chess. So these guys are playing chess, and we're kind of sitting there. And I mean, I'm right there at the table watching them, just thinking to myself, like, what have you gotten yourself into? Look at these guys. And they're mouthing off to each other, and Flacco gets upset with Bunny Hop, and he grabs a pen, and it wasn't even like his pen. It's like he's sitting there, the guy's mouth. He's like, "Yeah, you need to watch it, man. You know, fuck that. I watch eat shit, motherfucker. I ain't watching nothing. But you getting your shit, you know." And they're going back. He's like, "Man, you better stop that shit." And they're going back and forth. And Flacco's Hispanic, Bunny Hop's a black guy, and literally, I think I'm almost positive somebody's filling out their commissary sheet, and Flacco looks over and he goes, "Yo, man, can I get that pen?" And the guy goes, just for a second. He goes, "Yeah," and he hands it to him. He grabs it and he jumps up and stabs Bunny Hop.
Oh no!
I mean, a couple of times, like and it doesn't do much. It's just a pin.
Yeah.
But even if I took a pin and stabbed you with it, like it's gouging him. It's cutting. It's fucking him up. Then they get into it's a fist fight, and a whole fist fight. I'll never forget because it's so weird because they kept hitting the wall, and it's like they were rolling down the wall, fighting, and kept banging in the wall and slamming and hitting.
I mean, do corrections officers pile in there at that point to stop everything?
The movies. So the correction officer, he's sitting at his desk at the kind of like a podium kind of thing that's a little bit raised up, and he's maybe 50, 80 feet away, and he yells, "Hey, cut that out, you guys!" And he's screaming, and I jump up. So these guys get in this huge fight, and they're punching this and that. And then what happens is the Mexicans run over.
Because it becomes a racial thing.
And they start beating the crap out of Bunny Hop. And I jump up, and I run over, and I go, "Hey, that's enough!" Right?
Yeah.
And they stopped.
Well, look at you.
No. A black guy that's like 6'4" was in the shower, walked out of the shower, naked, suds dripping off him, holding his junk, and he walks up behind me like he's about to get involved in. So I scream.
And you think you're having this fantastic impact?
I think
the Great White Savior.
I actually, for a moment, I actually thought to myself, like, wow. These guys really respect me because they stopped and turned around. They're looking at me, and I mean, so you got all the kind of Mexicans like looking at me for just a second. Everything stops, and I realized. Then you kind of realize like the closest guy is kind of looking above me, and I turn around and it's this massive guy, and I remember he's holding his junk, and he's standing there like this, and I remember thinking, fuck, like he's dripping. I was like, I'm too close to this guy. I'm already he's like a foot behind me. It's way too close. So I turn around and walk off. By that point, the guards are now the doors are open. They're coming in. They're like, get in your rooms, get in your cells, get in your cells. Yeah. Everybody goes back, goes in their cells. And I remember it was funny because Bunny Hop the whole time, or after it kind of stopped, before the guards are kind of swarming in at that moment, he starts yelling at all the black guys. He's like, damn, because these guys beat the tar out of him for only about 20 or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But you get 6 Mexicans on you for 30 seconds, that's a fucking beating.
Yeah.
And so he starts screaming like, damn, you going to let them do that to me? You going to let them do, that's how it is? You going to let, it's just like, bro, like stop. What do you think?
All from a game of chess.
All from very disrespectful chess. I mean, all these guys are very disrespectful. And yeah. So
did they have dominoes also?
They did.
Smacking the table? Yeah, I've seen that in
It's
action.
horrible. Yeah. That's horrible too. The whole thing is horrible. But Yeah, so no respect. I didn't get the respect that I thought I was deserved.
Yeah.
It was very disappointing.
Well, look at you now. You can't,
I remember the next day telling everybody, because these two guys are gone now.
Yeah.
The next day I'm telling everybody at our little table, I'm like, listen, last night, I'm like, do you realize I'm doing this sound? They're like, yeah. Hey, do you remember me screaming? They're like, yeah. I said, and then they all stopped and turned around. I said, do you understand, for a split second, I thought that they I was like, wow, they stopped because I yelled, they respected me. And everybody, that's the reaction I got. Oh, Cox, you killed me.
it's humbling.
Yeah. It's funny, the guy that left that we did a podcast with, he came in and sat down. So first of all, the wall. I told you before, when I painted this wall, I for like 2-3 months, maybe 4 months with Jess, I was constantly, listen, I want to paint this wall red. And she's like, you're not painting the wall red. We're not painting the wall red. She's like, we don't own this place. It's a rental. We have a deposit. I'm like, okay, first of all, I have a deposit. You came in after the fact.
Yeah.
You contributed.
+1 to this dance.
Right. And I'm like, and I'll paint it. And she's like, no.
You're a painter. I mean, painting's nothing
Yeah.
for you. You can do that like that. It takes you 10 minutes.
Yeah, listen, I painted a wall black upstairs for Boziak, the guy that lived here, and he moved, and I've already painted it back. I mean, he was gone, a month, and it's already done. So I don't have a problem painting. But, it's constantly back and forth. So finally, she was like, if you want to paint the wall, fine, you can paint the wall. I'm like, okay. So I painted the wall. We have gotten so many compliments on this wall. And the guy that came here just before you sat down and he said, listen, I want to let you know, your podcast is so professional and it looks
It's a beautiful set.
Thank you.
I've always liked it. I've said that from the first time I came. I saw it. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to come here and do the show, is because it looked fantastic.
Right?
Yeah, and
Thank you.
That's when we got in the black shirt controversy, because I wanted to make sure I looked visual. Because you've taken all this time to build out this beautiful studio, I wanted to look. I wanted to be visually appealing to
and
your
I
audience.
misrepresented.
Oh, don't get me
the
started.
exchange.
Yeah. And then
I misrepresented that. I apologize.
you made me look like an idiot. Yeah.
Not true. But okay. All right. That's enough. All right.
Can we plug me?
Oh yeah. What? Oh yeah. The 26 years FBI.
No. It's my social media. I mean,
we'll do that.
All right, cool.
But now you're a licensed Florida. I would say licensed Florida private investigator.
Yeah, I'm a private investigator in Florida, specializing in financial crimes and frauds. But I work in all 50 states because I'm also a forensic accountant, and so that's how I make a living now.
I didn't know the 50 states.
Yeah, I mean, the Florida private investigative license has reciprocity in 7 other states, but if I need to work in Texas, then I'm working as a consultant or a forensic accountant. Realistically, you're not going to hire me to follow around a cheating husband in Texas. That makes no economic sense, but you may hire me to confront the guy who ripped you off in a Ponzi scheme and try to get your money back for you, and so that's what I do.
I'm going to leave that part in because you're going to explain it a lot better than links in the description.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I guess and as I've said before on the show, I do social media on TikTok and Instagram as a means by which to market my private investigative practice by telling kind of 2-minute true crime stories every morning on Instagram and TikTok. My moniker there is @SimonInvestigation. So if any of your followers wanted to follow me, I think there's good synergy between what we do.
And you can, and those links will be in the description box.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Also,
I appreciate it. I love coming on your show.
Click on it. Yeah, your stuff comes up all the time.
And I hear from so many people, my followers and potential clients, who say, I saw you on the Matt Cox show. And that means the world to me that you keep having me back. So thank you as a friend.
I no problem. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with the catchphrase, be cool and be cool? Where did you come up with that?
So I was in
have I asked you this before?
Never have.
No, okay.
Never have. So I was in high school, and I worked at a comic book store, and there was an older guy who worked at the comic book store. He used to say, be cool. And I thought he was like the coolest guy in the world. He was just like, this guy was so cool. And I thought, all right, well, I'm going to make that my thing. And so I was like 15, 16 years old. And I started saying, be cool to people instead of goodbye. And so when it became kind of my thing, it's so much that I didn't even hear myself saying it. You'd see the priest on Christmas morning and he'd shake your hand and say, well, have a Merry Christmas. I go, be cool, Father. And I would just walk away.
Does your mom ever go?
Yeah. And so when it came time to begin making these social media videos, ending a 2-minute crime story is kind of difficult. You want to have a definitive ending, and so I just sort of latched onto that. Have a great day and be cool as my tagline. But it's it's a goofy thing, but it's a goofy thing that I was doing since I was a kid.
What'd you come up with yours?
Mine?
Yeah, just natural.
I couldn't even tell you. It's funny. I didn't even think it was necessarily even a thing. Like the whole, when I go see you.
Mm-hmm, that's good.
I didn't even think that was like, I don't even know how that came about. I just did it once and then I started doing it because it is. How do you end it? And then the other day I was in First Watch, and my wife and I were sitting there, and this guy walked. I saw him kept glancing at me. I noticed that people will do that sometimes. Mm-hmm. They glanced at me, and as he was walking by, he was looking at me. He goes, "I love your stuff, bro." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And he goes, "See ya," like that. And I was like, "Ah."
It's fun.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, "Oh wow!" I said, "That's kind of a thing." And of course, my wife's like, "Do you want the waffles?"
I know.
She's so over me.
The wives are never impressed with.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I've been recognized a couple times. It's always really gratifying.
Yeah, it's super. I think that's super cool. Because I always thought to myself, like, laying in bed in prison, thinking about trying to pay your bills, and then to be sitting here and have people like recognize you and stuff, like,
it's amazing.
Coolest thing ever.
Absolutely.
Coolest thing ever.
And here's a little thing. Everybody glamorizes kind of old school like TV shows. Mm-hmm. But what you're doing here, and to a lesser extent what I do on social media, we're reaching a larger audience than some deep cabled show on investigation discovery.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you and I should be chasing that dream of going on investigation discovery would actually be a step down as far as the breadth of our audience. The only reason to do it would be for the money. And
right.
Honestly, but the idea that we as kind of internet true crime guys should somehow be marginalized and be treated as something less than those folks on investigation discovery or any of those other kind of true crime things. We're pulling bigger numbers than they are on a daily basis, without question.
Yeah, I was gonna say wow. I just got a buzzing in my ears. That's weird. So I actually thought something happened with the mics.
Are you tasting copper? Is there a shooting feeling up your arm?
No.
Okay.
No. Not yet.
I could save you live on YouTube. This could really increase my numbers.
This would be good, yeah.
he's hoping I hear that.
You're going to give the kiss of life.
Oh shoot. Yeah, I was thinking, what was I thinking? I don't even know what we were talking about.
How
TV shows.
What we do reaches a bigger audience than what they do over in traditional media.
Who was it? We had some guy on who was talking about going on a podcast and getting 100,000 views is worth more than paying $500,000 to get on TV and get 10 million views, because the truth is you've got on that TV program you have 30 seconds and most people click it off, but here for doing a 2-hour podcast they get to know who you are. It's so much more beneficial to you, and and it's free.
And that's why I started doing social media, right? I mean, you and I both have the same commodity: 30 years of stories to tell,
right?
And those stories are going to kind of tell the audience who we are much more so than, in my case, a Google ad or something like that that's going to pop up. And it wasn't until I started telling those stories on social media that my private investigative agency took off.
Nice. What was the name of the TV show? Real quick, we'll wrap it up. You can cut all this out if you want.
Thanks, good.
I was just thinking, what was the name of the one? Bruce Willis was in it.
Moonlighting?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, he was like a con artist pretending to be a private investigator with Sybil Shepherd. Yeah.
Yes.
That was his breakthrough role. It's a good show.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It's just wasted on.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
You know what I watched? What I watched almost the entire, or I watched probably 2 seasons of it. Rockford Files.
Solid show. Yeah. Yeah, he'd always have that answering machine at the beginning.
Oh, it was great. It was great. It's not a, it's a pretty bad show, but it's not bad. But like the car chases and and the fight scenes.
We grew up back to back with Magnum PI and Simon & Simon, right? I still get old people asking me about being a private investigator named Simon. So,
ready?
Do you know any other Tom Simons?
There is a guy working in the mailroom at my accounting firm who is also Tom Simon, and I guess the other Tom Simon that had a significant part of my life would be Tom Simon Sr., my father.
Okay. The reason I asked that is because the first time he came, there's this family friend of ours, and this guy has worked in DC. Like, I never really knew what he did, but he works, like, I assumed he always was like some type of CIA or something, and his name is Tom Simon.
Huh.
And they live in Florida now. So
Interesting. Yeah.
Do you know what he does now?
I think he works at maybe the Air Force Base. I don't know.
It's a pretty. I mean, Tom is. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry's named Tom, and Simon's not an atypical name. I remember one time some friends of mine were at the airport and they were in line talking about what an asshole Tom Simon was. Speaking about me, and this couple turned around and they go, "What are you talking about? That guy was named Tom Simon."
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've mentioned that I've known like probably 4 or 5 people named Mike Hayes. And then I actually had a guy named Matthew Cox.
Oh, yeah?
There's several people, obviously Matt Cox, but there was actually a guy that my buddy Danny, who was a bartender at the time, he actually managed like 3 bars, and he happened to be working in the bar one day. And this is when I was I on the run, or I'd just been no, I was on the run, but there were articles coming out constantly on me. And I'd been, like a year or 2. And this guy gave him his he just asked for his ID, looked at it, he's like, Matt Cox. He goes, huh. He goes, that's funny. He said, I grew up with a kid named Matt Cox, and Danny, we grew up together. And I'm thinking and he goes, is he on the run right now? And he goes, yeah, he is on the run right now. He goes, yeah, ruined my fucking life. That's what he did. He goes, oh, really? He said, yeah. He said, every time I go for a job interview, I try and date some girl. And he just started naming off all these horrible things that happened. So when I got out, I tried to get, Matt Cox, tried to get matt.cox, at gmail. I ended up going with contact.matthew.cox. And the problem is he actually has matthew.cox at Gmail.
To this day, he's still getting your emails.
he forwards them to me.
Oh, that's funny.
So every once in a while, when I first got out, he would forward an email, because what happens is people see contact.matthew. And they think they leave the contact out. Yeah. So he would forward them to me, and I was like, so one day I get this from Matt Cox saying, hey, I think this is I think this is was meant for you. We have the same same email, except you have contact. So he said, by the way, here, sent it. And I was like, oh wow, bro. I said, I'm going to assume that you've looked me up, and I've probably cost you some problems over the years. And he came back, he said, you have no idea how many problems you have cost me over the years. I love it. And I sent him back and I said, listen, I would love to hear about it. If you want to talk to me about it, if you want to call me up, if you want to cuss me out, if you want to tell me I'm a scumbag, I said, I totally, because I don't know if it's the same guy.
Yeah.
I said, I totally understand, and I am so sorry that if I've caused you any problems. And he goes, it's fine, bro. I'll keep forwarding your emails. I don't think we've ever, and I've probably gotten 20 emails.
It's really nice of him to do that.
Very nice of him.
Yeah.
Well, for all I know, he's not forwarding.
What percentage are you actually getting?
Right. At this point, I haven't heard from him in years.
He's cashing your checks somewhere.
By the way, there was another guy named Matthew Cox that was texting me, that contacted me on Instagram and said, yo, bro, we have the same name. And by the way, he had been locked up, I want to say, for steroids. He had a whole steroid. He's like, oh, I did like 5 years for steroids. He had all this, selling them and blah, blah. I got a whole crime story. And I was like, bro, you've got to come on the show. He's like, oh my God, I want to come on the show. We went back and forth. We actually scheduled something. Then he came back. He's like, I can't. Something happened. He couldn't. I was like, bro, you've got to come on. He's like, I know, I do. I will. And then I haven't heard from him since. But I have his number. I should contact him.
You should. I mean,
it would have been funny.
It'd be a fun split screen. They won't know which one to use the giant muscle man.
I think we're done now. We're done here. All right. Is that it? All right.
Yeah, if you wrap it up.
Thank you for coming. Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, please check in the description box. We're going to put all of Tom's links in the description box. You can go to his Instagram, TikTok, and his website. I'm assuming you have a website?
Yeah.
And his website. And contact him if you need a private investigator. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. See ya.
Let me do this, Colby. See ya, and be cool.
And be cool.
All right, real quick, Tom.